Well, good morning, everyone, on this fine, wonderful day today. Welcome to the Trailblazers table. Today, we'll be talking about the journey of trailblazers in the industry and their path towards success, towards inspiring others around the world, and just lightening up everyone's day as we have our guest here. Today, I'm your host, Kensho, Ando, Heng, and today marks our first episode of the Trailblazers table, where we'll be introducing our first special guest, Alexander Michael Gittens. So just a little overview. Alexander is an acclaimed author, speaker, and strategist whose insights have influenced hundreds of businesses globally and inspired thousands through his speeches. I've personally known Alex as a friend and a wonderful mentor throughout the year, and it is my absolute honor to bring him here today. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kensho. And you said this is the first episode of the Trailblazers podcast, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'm so excited. You know, we got a beautiful setup, we got a beautiful weather, and I'm so happy to have you here. And, you know, I think this is wonderful to have you here because this is, I think, the start of summer, but also the start of many people's transitions into the world, into their new journeys out of university, out of their life. Even for me, this is a very fresh kind of outlook in life. So I'm so happy that we're able to have this conversation to start up what we want to kind of discuss today. And I think today for the episode, we're going to be talking about just a little bit of your journey, a little bit of your outlook on, you know, how you push through life, how you overcome challenges, and how you look through success and go through, you know, forward every time with all these ups and downs. So I just wanted to start off and, you know, I want you to talk a little bit about, you know, a little bit of background of how you maybe reached or put yourself today and to the person you are today, you know, just a little overview from up to down kind of thing.
Okay. So, no, but thanks again for having me. And I think that's a great place to start because like a lot of people, I come from an immigrant family. And my parents came here, they met here in Canada, and my dad was going to college, and then he got sick. And when he got sick, our family, we weren't doing too well financially, but then it became even worse. And so my mom had 3 kids underneath the age of 10. She had to cash in her retirement savings. And I remember the stress of us not being able to make ends meet, but I also remember just how scared I was because my dad was in the hospital and he was sick. Kensho, I was probably 7 years old at the time, but I remember promising myself that no matter what happens in life, I'm going to be super successful. I'm going to make a lot of money. I kind of wanted to be like the savior where I took care of everybody, and I wanted to make sure that we were never in that scary situation again. Of course. But when I went away to college, I lost all my scholarships because I didn't focus. I had no money. And so I cut corners and I started working, like hustling to make money. Some of it was legal, some of it wasn't, right? And I ended up with like 52 charges of copyright infringement against me. I owed so much money. Basically, when I was leaving college, I had to rebuild my whole life. I had to rebuild my reputation. I had to start all the way over. Of course. So I think for me, it was like I tried to do things fast. I tried to make money quickly. I tried to look the part, be the man, have the right car, get the big house. But what I didn't work on was my character. Of course. And I realized that the way I do things is more important than what I do. So then I asked myself a question that I think everyone has to ask at a point in their life is, what kind of person do I want to be? And I realized that I wanted to be the best business mind I could be. But I also wanted to be someone who was worthy of respect and was worthy of having people's trust and being someone that could be relied on. So every decision I made from that point forward came with that mindset of my character and my competency are the 2 things I'm going to invest in. And even if something's shiny and it seems incredible as an opportunity, I'm not going to step outside of my values ever again.
Definitely. And I mean, that really, really resonates. Sure. Thank you for sharing, because I think the biggest thing a lot of people, you know, I'm in your shoes too. I think we've both shared, you know, a kind of level of drive where we want to grab everything, you know, be the top or be this. And I think for me, what really resonates is the fact that, you know, sometimes I do realize sometimes not everything shiny is the best thing ever. You know, sometimes you can't just grab everything or think that you're some superhero to grab every single thing into one shot. And I think, you know, that really, really inspires me in the fact that, you know, that transition in the mindset, telling yourself, you know, I want to be this person, I want to break out of this. And I also know what I want for myself. That's really inspiring. And I think that really brings me to my next kind of thought or question is, was there a specific moment when you grew up where you were like, hey, you know, this exact moment was when I wanted to change. This is where I'm going the other way. I don't like this path. I don't like what I'm doing. I want to completely swap and go down this next path.
It's a beautiful question because I think if you see a Hollywood movie,
Yeah.
they kind of have this big epic turning point,
Exactly.
like in the hero origin story where they see everything comes together and it all makes sense. I don't think there was ever a moment. I remember being very confused growing up. I remember being very frustrated. I remember thinking, man, I have all these different interests, but I have no clue how they fit together. I remember feeling like I was always in the wrong place. There weren't a lot of minorities around. I was shy. I didn't really speak up. And so I always remember thinking like panic and anxiety around being able to find what I'm supposed to be great at. And I would look at people that were really, really wealthy and I'd say, okay, well, they seem to have it all together, but their relationships don't seem to be the way that I want, or they're tacky and they kind of show off too much. But then I'd see people that were really good in their community and then they were broke. And I was like, oh, I don't want that either. And so I just wanted to be big. I wanted to matter. I wanted to be important. But I guess I was searching for myself. So I think the most important thing, and it's going to sound cliche, but the fact that I had all of these obstacles and there's just a tempest in my mind, it didn't stop me from trying things. Even when I tried the wrong thing and I had to like rebuild my life, it didn't stop me from trying. I think I was very aware that if I don't change, nothing will change. So there was a series of moments in my life where I could have decided I'm not going to do that extra degree. I'm not going to knock on that extra door. I'm not going to do that extra proposal. But I guess I knew what would happen if I stopped. I would be exactly where I was. And I didn't like where I was. So I figured I got to do something. So I guess I had that inner drive where it's like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how to get there, but I got to do something. So that's a great question, though. No one moment.
No, exactly.
But there was just sort of like, I can't stop because what I'm experiencing right now is not acceptable to me.
Exactly. And I think generally, I think that's crazy because I think everyone in their day-to-day, there's not one single person that wants to wake up and they're like, oh, I want to go down the horrible path. I don't see anything for myself. You know, and I think even with a lot of people, you wake up and you have this perfect dream of this is what you want, you know? And unfortunately, a lot of times the path there is not perfect. It's not going to be amazing where, oh, you see this Hollywood celebrity with a dream home and you're like, okay, I'm going to wake up one day and get there. You know, unfortunately, the reality is there's going to be a lot of bumps. There's going to be a lot of stops and ways to, you know, overcome them. And it's how I think you shape yourself after each kind of challenge. You know, even for myself, I think there's a lot of times I was like, oh my, why is my life not going exactly what I want? Why am I so lost? What am I going to do with that? And I think the biggest thing that really resonates with me is the fact that when life hits you with a roadblock, you know, are you going to continue sulking? Are you going to continue going around every day saying, oh, I hate my life, I hate this? And I think, unfortunately, in the reality is there are a lot of people that kind of bring that energy, I would say, around where every day you talk to them, no matter how much you try to push that energy, you're like, come on, let's do this together. There's always going to be some people who unfortunately look downwards or always say, oh no, I don't want to do this. I hate I hate my life. And I think the mindset of really driving yourself, having that positive drive really does lift people out of, you know, a lot of helps you overcome a lot of road hurdles and everything. I think for me, that really resonates because I think when there's a lot of times where you really feel down, you don't know where to go. It is nice to look forward and be like, hey, I've got this dream, I've got this goal, I want to overcome it, I want to push through. And I think even for you, was there kind of, I know you had a lot of different experiences growing up and everything. I know some of them was actually, you know, you used to play piano. You also played baseball. For me, I've had a lot of hobbies. Surprisingly, back home, I was DJing professionally for a while.
Oh my god! What was your DJ name?
It was actually Kensho, except my E was a 3. And I was like, this is the craziest name out there. I was like, people are gonna laugh. So I mean, for me, that was a different part of my life, a very, very different kind of career path. And at that moment, I loved it as a passion, but I hit a point where I was like, hey, I realized what I love doing is actually business. When I was DJing, what I loved doing was connecting with people, talking to people, finding out how I can solve problems. That really moved me towards the realm of business. And I think that was also a path where I realized, hey, you know, it is a passion, but this is not exactly where I want to go further. And I think for you too, you know, you've played piano, you've played baseball. There's so many different areas in your career that you probably have. It was like, which direction should I go? And I think for you, did any of these, you know, experiences growing up help shape who you are or really transform the direction you were taking from that moment?
Yeah, no, thanks. You really did your research, so that's great.
Of course.
Yeah, so I played baseball all over the world. I played music all over the world. But I remember thinking to myself, at the time, there was no internet, there was no social media, and everyone I saw in the media that was black and was a male, because remember, I was in an area with no minorities, right? It was just all poor white neighborhoods, the projects and that sort of thing, welfare areas. And I remember thinking, every successful black person that I can see is like some form of entertainer or some form of athlete, which is a different form of entertainment, right? Because that's how they get paid, from people watching. So I remember thinking, it's like, I don't want to be a musician. I don't want to be on stage with people looking at me, because I loved music, but I didn't really love performing. And then as a baseball player, I loved baseball, but right around age 16, 17, when everyone sort of was, you know, hitting their growth spurts and all of that, I very quickly realized, I was traveling with some NCAA players, we were overseas, and playing with those guys that were just a year or two older, there was such a skill difference, and they weren't even going to the major league. So I sort of realized that, yeah, maybe in Ontario, maybe in Canada, I was a pretty decent baseball player. But even just seeing the next level, I was like, yeah, I can't get to this next level. Like, I cannot. So did those experiences shape me? Absolutely, because it's like when you were talking about being a DJ, right? If you hadn't have gone through that, you wouldn't have understood I love connecting with people, but maybe the way I'm connecting with people is not the optimal way for me. So I think that anything you try that is difficult and aligned with your values, it allows you to get a deeper insight to who you want to be. And for me, that's the whole purpose of life, is getting closer to my ideal self. And if I don't try things that are a little bit different and a little bit more difficult, then I'm not going to be able to find out who I am. I think the key is to line up your actions with your values. As long as you're doing things that are aligned with your values, then you want to pick the most difficult thing you can do. And then when you fail from that, it won't be failure. It'll be a lesson, it'll be wisdom, it'll be courage, it'll be resiliency, which are all the things you need to achieve greatness.
No, and I love that. And I think, you know, growing up, I'm very happy that I was able to explore different things. You know, I played basketball in high school. I went into DJing, which is such a curveball from high school. And I think the biggest thing with that is just realizing that there's so many different things that you can try out that will help shape your path. And I think for you, what advice would you give to those growing up and trying to figure out, like, you know, there's always parents who are going to push this, you know, instruments. I also did a lot of instruments. And then I realized older, you know, sometimes you look back and you're like, I wish I did that more, or I wish I did that more. Do you have any advice for those, you know, younger, trying to figure out what path to take? What kind of mindset should they be having? You know, whether it be, I hate these things, or should I actually look more optimistically and realize maybe these little things will shape the future, shape who I want to be? You know?
It's a great question. I think there's two things in your question, so I'm going to divide them.
Of course.
The first thing is, do I give up? When do I know that something is not for me?
That's great.
And I think when we have, should I give up? What should I do? How should I do things? And why do I do things? We end up with, if you remember back in high school when we studied algebra, it's like if we have one equation and two unknowns, then we can't solve for it, right? So what I did in my life, which was very helpful, is I took a quantitative approach to decision making, and I said to myself, okay, why am I doing the things I'm doing? I asked myself the big questions about life. Why am I here? What is meaning? What is purpose? And I realized that for me, I really wanted to become the absolute best expression of my talents, my passions, my values, my character traits, my behavior. Like, it was really important for me to become the absolute best version of who I am. So that was number one. Then I made the decision that, look, if I don't give my all in everything I do, then I'm never going to get the most out of a situation. So then I was like, okay, I know why I'm doing things, to be the best possible me and make the biggest positive impact. But now, whenever I'm doing something, I am going to give it my all. I'm going to do it as if this is the only thing that my entire existence is based on. So then there's no little decisions, there's no big decisions. Every moment matters.
Of course.
So then we have one more variable in our equation, and that is, what am I going to do? So I know why I'm doing it, I know how I'm doing it, but then what? But the cool thing about only having one variable left is, if you are going to give your all and do things that are aligned with your soul, then you can't do 100 different things.
Exactly.
So Kensho, I have to be so careful what I say yes to, because I know I'm going to do it as if it was a reflection of my entire existence, and I know that I'm going to give it my all and line it up with my purpose. So now I'm more careful what I say yes to. But once I commit to something, I throw myself into it like nothing else exists. And that's literally moment by moment.
And I think I really, really like that because, you see, for me, I think one of my biggest actually flaws per se is, you know, growing up when you're trying to break out, you're trying to get that dream career, get that dream life. Every opportunity that pops up, you're like, I have to take it. I have to do it. And when you're younger, you have that drive, you have the energy. And there has been times, you know, I've been taking constant jobs over jobs, you know, and I think throughout school I was doing, you know, 4 jobs concurrently with school. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm so busy all the time. And I think it's just that mindset that I was like, you know, I have to pursue everything because the more, like you said, variables I open up, the more paths I open up, the more options I have towards success. And I think the biggest thing for me is sometimes you work so hard and you're just burning yourself and you get a little bit lost. You know, for me, sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, what am I going towards? So I think for me, what I really want to delve into now is that aspect where you're like, sometimes, yes, you accept things, you put your 100%, and I'm the same. But also, what do you recommend to do when you realize you're pushing, and how do you decide, like, okay, this might not work for me. This is no longer the path I should be doing, without telling yourself, once you cut this off, you're cutting your path towards success. You know, you're cutting one more leg towards there.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to look at it 2 ways. The first way I'm going to look at it is sort of retrospectively. So I'm older now. I've had a lot of zigs and zags in my life. But I think when I was younger, I thought success happened in a very straight line. So I'm going to make a series of perfect decisions, and the outcome is going to be so wonderful that everyone's going to see how brilliant I am. The truth is that life doesn't happen in straight lines. And what seems like a zig and a zag and an up and a down is actually just the universe testing you to see if you'll stay true to being the best use of your talents, passions, and values, and creating beautiful outcomes. The metric I use for the individual decisions now is one I wish I had used before. And I simply look at it from 2 different ends of the spectrum. The first part is, how aligned is this with my values? When I think of the pro forma, or I think of the future version of what I'm doing, is it something that I am proud of? Is it honorable? Does it congrue with my spirit? Is it tuned to my soul? So if I'm doing something that involves helping children or minorities or education, or even we've done so many projects together with the university, that is part of who I want to be. That is part of my ideal self. So we check that box. Yes, in my values, I'm 100%. Then on the other end of the spectrum, I say, how difficult is the action I'm doing? I want to take actions that are so difficult that I feel like I'm likely to fail. Because when you fail doing something that's aligned with your values, then you get all the things you need to be great. You just got to get back up. So we call it this interesting dichotomy: 100% comfort in my values, and as much, I almost want 100% discomfort in my actions. So make sure you're doing things that are super, super hard, where you're afraid of failure, and they're completely aligned with your ideal self.
Of course. And I think generally just looking at that, you know, bouncing back a little bit, I think when you're constantly pushing at 100%, you know, and I think for me, I've had a lot of these moments where at the peak, you know, we all have great days, we have bad days, we have moments we just kind of zone out. And I think for me, I've noticed a lot, you know, there are times I'm working at optimum capacity. Everything I'm doing works so well. No matter how hard the pace is, no matter how many things I'm doing, it works well. You know, I'm like at the perfect. But then there are times I wake up on a bad day, I don't feel so well. And suddenly everything comes crashing down. And those moments really wake you up, and you're like, holy, what am I doing? Why am I doing so much? And then you go into a period, you're like, is this the right path? Am I really pushing 100%? And I think, at what level do you think, you know, someone should also think about taking care of themselves over kind of pushing so hard, you know? Because for me, you know, I'm always on the constant like, okay, I can do this, I can do this. But then sometimes when life hits and you're like, holy, then you take a step back, but then you're already so delved deep into these. You know, what are your tips on just kind of realizing I need to step back? And how do you even step back when you're so deep into a lot of these projects or a lot of these kind of ventures you're doing?
It's a great question. It's a great question. It makes me think of this Alanis Morissette song. She said, I recommend getting your heart trampled on to anyone. She's like, I recommend it. And for me, it's going to sound a little different than what most people say,
Yep.
but I think you should go absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I think you should push yourself past what I think whatever boundary you think you have is not really a boundary. I think when it comes to your work ethic and the intensity, you should be an absolute monster. That's what I think. What happened to me, I traveled for 2 years with the team, 23 different countries. I put on 25, 30 pounds.
Yep.
And when I went back to working on a new project, I couldn't focus. I was falling asleep. I would go to sleep, can't fall asleep, wake up tired.
Yeah.
And I realized that my health and my fitness is getting in the way of the things I want to do.
Of course.
And so it's crazy. I eat the exact same thing every single day. Every day.
Wow.
I go to the gym 6 days a week. We play basketball once a week. And I realized for me, the feeling of being full and enjoying great food, it's temporarily, it's great, but I hate the feeling of being slow and my mind's not working that quick. So I've decided that the self-care for me is not, I need to take care of myself because I'm working so hard. I said, my mind, my body, my spirit, I need to invest in them constantly because whether I'm focused on them or not, they're working in concert to make me the best version of myself.
Definitely.
So if I am not being healthy and giving my body what it needs to perform at a high level, then I'm disrespecting myself. How could I expect for other people to see how good I am or how important I am if I'm treating myself poorly?
Definitely.
And so it's not really about this self-care for luxury and loving myself and all. I've never really struggled with self-esteem that way. I guess being from an immigrant family, we weren't really taught that our happiness is individual. It's not happiness is like the people I love being in a great situation and driving great. Like my happiness is tied up in the people I care about. It's not just for me alone, right? Like if the people I love are happy, then I'm happy.
Exactly.
But when it comes to taking care of myself, it's the same thing, Kensho. Am I getting closer to my ideal self? My ideal self has a clean house. My ideal self takes care of themselves. They move. My ideal self is careful what he puts in his mind. My ideal self is careful what people are around him. I don't take in information that I don't plan to take action on. I don't run after like the sensational things that are happening in the news. My ideal self doesn't want those things. So I have to discipline and sacrifice because my tendencies are always going to take me away from my ideal self. But I've been given this wonderful opportunity when things go wrong to react to them in alignment with who I want to be. In fact, it's when things go wrong that I really get to see who I am. Because at that point, it's like I have stress, I'm worried, I'm tired. And in those moments, I take a little extra moment and I'm like, okay, this is what they talked about. It's never as cool as it is. In your mind, you're thinking it's going to be this epic moment, but really you're just depressed and alone. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? But in those moments, I kind of remind myself of my equation. And I'm just like, look, I try to count my blessings and see the things that are wonderful in my life and just keep moving.
And I think I really, really love that last part you talked about, kind of self-care, taking care of yourself, because I was one that growing up, I was like, oh, just work, study, work, study. There's no real idea of self-care. Even going to the gym was something based on convenience, Oh, I have a bit of time, I'll go to the gym, but it wasn't a routine. It wasn't something that was self-care. Even, something I started doing is meditating, taking time to myself, just getting in the zone, really, grounding myself, thinking what my day is going to be and just going with that. And I think things like these little things like self-care, taking time for yourself are often overlooked, especially for, I think, men. We always think like, okay, we got to take care of everyone around us. We have to keep grinding. We have to keep going out. And I think, going back to what you said, like I'm the same as you. I care for me. Success is taking care of everyone around me, seeing everyone happy, making sure those around me are also stable, safe. They're going through life as happy as me and as successful as me, because I think to me, your success also reflects who you influence around you, who you're together with. And I think that's why routine is really something that's really coming up to me, because I think for me, I'm just starting off with, trying to get into a routine, whether it be going to the gym, cooking, eating healthy. But what I actually realized with myself is there are weeks that the routine is perfect. Every day I'm going to the gym. These are like beautiful weeks. I'm smiling all the time. But then it comes to times where suddenly I have a little flop. I decide work is catching up too much. There's too many things happening. And that one little moment that breaks your routine can then become 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And how do you kind of break past those little flops of demotivation? Like you said, there are times we can't really control how happy or great we are. The gym does require you pulling yourself out, and when you can't even pull yourself out at that low, How are you supposed to even do a routine? How are you supposed to be excited 100%. And happy? So I think, how do you, with your experience of traveling, with everything, break past that? Because I know for me, traveling a lot too, coming back to a routine after traveling is horrible. You even traveling, there's no routine. You're bouncing here and there. So for you, when you do come back, how do you ground yourself in times that you're like, oh, I have no energy?
Kensho, I'm so glad you asked me this question because I have struggled with this. I have fought with this. I've wanted to be different than I am. And this is a question that I've always wanted to answer. So when I get out of my routine, I have a horrible time getting back on track. I've realized that I am a very disciplined person. I don't struggle with discipline, but I have very weak willpower, very, very weak willpower. So when I was on my meal plan and I'm cooking and I'm eating and I said, oh, the fellows are coming over for football on Sunday. I'm going to get some chips, some snacks, some whatever. I cannot do that because if I get chips on Friday and the boys are coming over on Sunday, I will eat them. I do not have the willpower to have certain foods. I've tried. I've said, get stronger, get what I have to accept myself. If I am in environments where it's all you can eat or whatever, I do not have the willpower to overcome that. But I do have discipline. I can stick with difficult things for a long period of time. So my environment, if you go to my home, everything in my environment is set up for success to an obsessive level. There is nothing on my desk that is not at right angles. Beautiful. The only food in my fridge is the food that I eat the same thing every single day. There is nothing in my life that takes, I have to obsess because when I get off for weeks and months. And I didn't want it to be this way. I wanted to be someone who could have better willpower. Of course. And when it comes to going to the gym, I go to the gym at 6 a.m. If I say I'm going to go at 4 p.m., I won't go. And if I get off, I'm going to be off for 2 weeks. Exactly. So it's all about ordering your world. I don't need to make my bed in the morning. I don't need to fluff the pillows perfectly on the cushions on the couch perfectly. But when I order my world, then when I encounter the chaos, as soon as I leave my door, I have this oasis where everything is in order. And I think a lot of people, they do struggle with this. And the struggle is not really the interesting part because I'm the worst. But the question is, what am I going to do to give myself the environment where I can be at my best? I love that. Then when you get off, which we all do, we fall off, we binge or whatever, is how quickly can I get back on? Another thing that's helpful for people is letting people in your life know what your goals are, so you're kind of accountable. There's a gentleman that we know, he works out in our gym, and he lost over 100 pounds. And it took him over 2 years, but he actually took a photo every day. And he's got this wonderful time-lapsed this wonderful time-lapsed video where you can just see, his body just changing in real time. But I think posting that every day and saying that I'm going to get in shape is a big motivator where you think other people are going to see you. So this is what I would say. If you know you struggle with self-discipline or willpower or that, you need to be obsessive about your environment and the people you spend time around. You need to not worry because everyone has things that they are easy. Like for some people, going to the gym is not difficult. But for some people, when they're at the gym, they don't put the effort that's necessary. They're just kind of going from machine to machine. They don't actually do that progressive overload that you need to build muscle and get and reduce your body fat percentage. Of course. So whatever you need, if you need to, I had to hire a trainer for 3 years or so, $1,000 a month. I don't even know where I found the money, Kensho, but it's like I had to do it because I needed someone to keep me in that. Whatever it takes to become the best version of myself, I will do it. I'm committed to it. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think I definitely love that. And, I think just pushing back a little bit, obviously, while it's wonderful to, have a perfect routine or tell yourself, this is exactly how I want my day. This is all the things I want to control in my life. There are often times, and this is where I really get down, I agree with the willpower thing. For me, if a bag of chips is there, no matter how hard I tell myself, I'm not going to touch it, I will touch it. No matter.
I will touch it.
2 a.m. I'm crawling out eating chips. It's horrible.
I'll get there at 1:30 a.m.
Exactly.
I'll get there before you do.
And that's the thing, I think a lot of times while you want to control every part of your life, it does become hard when oftentimes, like for me, I would love to control every aspect of my life and just continue with exactly how things are planned. But unfortunately, you know, life hits, and sometimes your friends want to hang out. You have this you need to do. A lot of variables get added into your perfect routine, right? And I think the biggest thing for me is now I've come into this little shell sometimes.
Sure.
I'm like, I don't want to see my friend. I don't want to do this because it's going to mess up my routine. But that also becomes very unhealthy on the other hand, because now you're telling yourself, I want this perfect life, which, yes, to yourself, it's amazing. But then you've closed off many other opportunities, many other things that, while they may not be work, while they may not be your routine, are actually important to ourselves as humans, right? Socializing, connecting with people. So for you, you know, when variables that you do not really have too much control have, how do you break out and tell yourself, you know, this is okay, without also breaking completely out of your routine?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a great question. And Kensho, it starts with a very simple question. What do you want?
Of course.
Right? And maybe you don't know what you want, but maybe you know what you don't want. You can start there. But I already know, I've already made my decision that I am not okay with being less than my all. I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with being less than the absolute highest expression of my talents, my passions, my values. I want my traits, my characters, and my behaviors to be lined up with the virtuous, high-functioning, high-output, incredible person that I want to be. That's what I want. I don't think anyone else should want it. I don't care if anyone else wants it. I know myself, and being the absolute best of who I am, being true, is the most important thing to me.
Of course.
There's a quote by Abraham Lincoln that I love. He says that I am not bound to win. I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed. I am bound to live by the light that I have. And when I think of winning and succeeding, it doesn't mean a lot to me because I don't know what that means in a life. I don't know how you win at life. I think by being born in Canada, by being educated and literate, I've already won the global lottery. You know what I mean? I've already won the most important lottery already.
Yes.
But when I think of being true to who I am and living by my own light, then for me, there is no version of myself that I can accept that isn't giving my all.
Of course.
That decision to give my all makes other decisions for me. So now I have to ask myself, I know what I want. What am I willing to sacrifice?
Okay.
And my health, it's part of the person, so I won't sacrifice that.
Of course.
The relationships I have with my family and my loved ones, I won't sacrifice that.
Yes.
But are there friends that I've had to move on from, not because they did anything wrong, but because they were doing things or they were in a season of their life that wasn't in congruence with where I am? Absolutely.
Correct.
Because I am willing to sacrifice anything that is not central to the person I want to be. Do I think other people should do that? Don't know, don't care, right? Because I've already decided who I want to be, and I know there's a cost to every decision. I am willing to pay the cost to be the absolute best version of who I am. I'm willing to pay the cost even if I don't become the best version of who I am. Because what I'm not okay with is saying that my best day was in the past.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to try to not stop living until I'm dead. So I guess if we want to make that an equation, it's simple. What do you want? Capital W, and then immediately, what are you willing to sacrifice? And what you're willing to sacrifice is more important than what you want. I went 14 years without taking a vacation. Working 90 hours a week. For most people, they said, I could never. No problem. That's fine. But there's a cost. Because if you do what everyone else is doing, you're going to get the results they have. So I don't care what other people are doing. I don't care what's popular. I don't care about self-care or what, like those things I don't think about. I think about being healthy. I think about being true. I think about being a respected and supporting person in my family. And I think about every moment I'm in, how can I add value while staying true to who I am? Everything else to me are just buzzwords. I don't care. I'm not interested. Right? And that's not dismissive. It's simply focused.
And I think definitely, you know, I think really aligning to what you want. I think one thing I really learned is, you know, as you grow up, unfortunately, who cares? You know, like you are on your own journey. You have to figure out what you want for yourself. And I think one thing I really did learn that you mentioned too is just, unfortunately, sometimes not all friendships are beneficial to you. And it's not that you guys are fighting. It's not that you had a whole kind of, you know, kerfluffle that you guys hate each other.
Kerfuffle,
Yeah, it's a new word I'm going to add here. I think the biggest thing is the fact that, you know, unfortunately, sometimes like when we're on different paths, you know, everyone's on different journeys. And what one person's road to success is, it might be completely different or completely off the line with what I view as my own success. And I think really, really grounding yourself and telling yourself, you know, it's not that I'm cutting my circle or I'm, you know, hating my friends. It's actually that this is the life I'm going for myself right now. How am I going to attain that? And, you know, I'm going to take that route no matter what it costs. And like you said, the cost, unfortunately, might be a large friend group. You know, I used to be the type that every single day I had to have a dinner, lunch, friend. And then I realized, you know, okay, now I'm taking 4 or 5 hours a day going for lunch, dinner, everything. I come home, I'm tired, that's all. And that means technically that whole day I've done almost nothing for myself, for my achievement. And I think definitely now I've really grounded myself that I do love seeing my friends, but now it's more on a controlled basis where we all understand, hey, we all need a break. We've had a tough time. We're going to have this one day, get together, no work, nothing. We're just going to have a good time. And that mindset, when you have a community that really pushes you towards success, that's really where you break out of it.
Absolutely.
And I think just aligning your goals and having a community of people who support you, that makes your day early.
I couldn't agree more.
So much better. You know,
I couldn't agree more.
Like when you're trying to eat healthy, if you have 40 friends around you, let's go to KFC, let's go to McDonald's, eat. How are you going to attain that goal? You know, it's really breaking out of that and finding that community. And that really takes to me, you know, I'm trying to set up my own routine. I'm trying to figure out. And I just want to know, you know, what does a day in your life look like?
Oh my goodness.
What is your routine? Let me know.
We're going to bore people here.
No.
Like literally bore them.
A summary, because I think you're very inspiring in the sense that, you know, you're very grounded with your routine. You know what you have in your day. And you also know your priorities. You know what you don't want to break. So what is something that is your day-to-day routine that you're not going to break no matter what?
Sure. Yeah. That's a great question. Before I answer it, I do want to say something, because you talked about success and wanting success and all of that. And you and I are very ambitious people.
Definitely.
If you are naturally not ambitious, there is zero problem with that. If you want to work an honest job, if you want to work a part-time job, if you want to do nothing and sit on the couch and eat nachos and watch television, people fought and died for your freedom to live life on your own terms. If it brings you joy to be lazy and apathetic, you see, I'm not making it sound very appealing. If you want to do nothing with your life, that's okay. That's okay. The most important thing is you're true to who you want to be. And if you come to a point where you're like, I'm doing too much and I want to do less, or I haven't done enough and I want to do more, as long as you're living on your terms and you're not harming anyone else, that is fine. Who cares what someone thinks about your routine or your life? And I got to be honest, they don't care nearly as much as you think.
Definitely.
People typically only care when you start doing better than them and they have to reflect on their own life. But that's not your problem.
Of course.
Right? So, but answering your question, so my day starts, I probably wake up naturally between about 5:30 and about 5:45 a.m. And our gym opens at 6 a.m. And I try not to do any email until I get to the gym. So on Monday through Saturday, I go to the gym 6 days a week. And then Thursday mornings, Kristoffer, our creative director who's here, Shagan Atwell, our technical director, we play basketball 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. Thursday morning. So every day except for Sunday. On Sundays, I wake up probably around 6:30 a.m. And we go to one of the luxury hotels in Toronto and we just have a coffee and we read for 2 hours.
Amazing.
So I start my week on Sundays with the sun coming up and we're reading. And it's a beautiful hack because we go to the Shangri-La, the W Hotel, the St. Regis, but you have the whole lobby to yourself. Coffee is the same price as it is at Starbucks. I walk there. Like this is not a rich flex, right? Anyone can do this. I love that. I walk to the W Hotel all the way from next to the CN Tower all the way up to Yorkville. It's about 9,000 steps there and back. You just go there, you get a coffee, and we read for an hour. We read for 2 hours. Beautiful environment. There's no one there. Everyone's asleep, and that's how the week starts. From there, I typically take meetings from 9 a.m. to about 7 p.m. So my clients can book meetings there. I have to do business development, sales meetings, and all of that. But typically with the different time zones that our clients are in, they can book anytime during the day. Every second or third week, I try and chill with my homies, try and go out. There's absolutely no alcohol in my life. There's none. My meals are all cooked. I eat the same thing I eat zero rice, no potatoes, no nothing. I eat 15 servings of vegetable a day and just clean proteins. And I have a cheat meal probably every third week or so. Right now, I still got to get rid of all that 2 years of traveling and all of that. So, but my life is very segmented. And what I do, Kensho, is I even book the times where I have to work on different client work, and I have that organized. And even if I'm hanging out with a friend, it's scheduled in my calendar as well. So I watch mostly sports. I don't watch any network television, no news whatsoever. I love movies and all of that. But typically, it's a pretty boring routine of waking up really early. I'm always physically in bed by about 9:30, and I'll watch nature shows. So
I love that.
David Attenborough puts me to sleep every night, right? Like, but I love, so things like Planet Earth or like nature shows. I'll always watch that before bed for about 15 minutes, and that's it. That's it. The other part of my life, which is the joy of my life, is my godchildren. I have 6 of them. Beautiful. So my best friend and business partner, her 2 daughters, if I don't see them every 2 weeks, then I start getting a little bit like I miss them too much. So typically on Saturdays after I work out, I'll go see the kids. And then my nieces and nephews are a big part of my life as well. But that's it. That's it.
I love that. I mean, honestly, the funny thing is, I thought I wake up naturally early at 6:30.
Sure.
You beat me already. You're already at the gym when I'm opening my eyes.
That's weak, Kensho. You got to get up earlier.
Well, I mean, honestly, this is great to hear because I think, even one of the routines I'm really trying to get into is reading a book, getting into that because you see, the funny thing is everyone, like when you're going to university, we're technically reading nonstop every day.
It's true.
But it's not for yourself. It's not for your own enjoyment. It's not for your own self-learning and self-growth. Yeah. And I think that's something really huge that's really coming into my life, and I think, before I have a lot of questions based off this, but I think starting off, for me and for a lot of others trying to get into just taking time to read for yourself, how do you feel the impact of not just reading, but self-learning is at all stages of life, learning little things about things, whether it be by books or watching a video or podcast just like that, what is the importance of that in, or having that in your daily routine, how important is that? Because a lot of people, when you say, I think my struggle right now is I have a pile of beautiful books I can't wait to read. But then it comes to, I don't have time in my routine or I fall asleep, And why is that important to actually integrate that to your routine and add learning to your daily life?
For me, it's everything. For me, it's everything. It's a natural insulator against judgment, right? So Walt Whitman has a beautiful quote. He says, be curious, not judgmental. And when you think you know everything, well, that's all you'll ever know. So when you're curious about how things work and you're curious about other people's expertise, when you read, you get to spend time with the most wonderful minds that have dedicated their entire lives to something which might be just tangential to you. And so you get this wonderful reflection. On top of that, in the looks department, in the charm department, Kensho, I came up short. My ability to have some good horsepower underneath the brain here. So I got to feed my mind. My mind needs to be fed, just like my body needs nutrition and all of that. It's very important for me to have ideas and new ideas and challenge ideas. That's my superpower. That knowledge is power. And so reading for me is not something I need to integrate into my life. It's a central part of my life because when you understand the blessings that you have, we're not just talking about a loving family and a great community. Just think of literacy. For most of human history, most people could not read. I get to share time with the best minds that have ever lived. I get to hear them speak about the things that are important to them as they wanted me to hear it. And I get to do it at my speed. I can go back, I can highlight it, and then I can quote. them. I take screenshots in my phone. I actually take a photo of the page and I memorize the quotes I want because I want to own this knowledge. In this interview, I've quoted Walt Whitman. I've quoted Abraham Lincoln, right? It makes me seem more smarter than I am because I get to make a part of me all of this wonderful knowledge that they've had. So the opportunity of reading, the privilege of literacy, and the power of knowledge is so wonderful. I could never ignore it.
Definitely.
It literally is making me the best version of who I am.
No, and I love that. And I think the biggest thing that, people often overlook is the fact that, learning doesn't have to be something grueling or something that's going to take up your life or time. And I think it's beautiful. When I started reading, I've noticed I love this, I love sitting down and just relaxing and reading. And I think, going off a little tangent here, but, for many people, I think the world during COVID has moved into a world of remote work. You're now able to go to work at home. You open a computer, you're on a Zoom call.
Yes.
And I think for me, this is a very personal question to me because now I've transitioned from a very rigid routine university life where I wake up at 9, I get to school, finish my work, come home. It's a very nice kind of flow. But now transitioning into the work life where now a lot of my work is primarily remote. And I'm thinking, I have this routine, but unfortunately the routine gets very jumbled up because nowadays I wake up, I'm sitting, my office is nearby in my same house. I'm walking over, getting up my computer, and oftentimes that routine becomes blurred because I wake up and now I know I don't have to commute. I just crawl over to the bed, go to the work desk, and start working. And then that blur often causes a lot of issues in terms of sometimes I wake up, I'm like, oh God, you know, I'm just rolling over. I work till 6, roll back to bed. You know, there's no flow, there's no routine. And I think when it comes to time like that, you know, when a lot of people nowadays that can relate are working remote, working from home. And obviously sometimes the privilege of going out to an office or booking is not something you can have. You know, your work is primarily remote. You know, how would you advise people when every day you're doing the same thing, opening a laptop, opening a desk, and just looking at a screen for days on end? And how do you stay motivated? Because you know, I've had times I'm like, oh God, you know, another day of opening a computer, another day of this. And I think remote work is wonderful, but also you really do lose that social touch.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not in an office where I get to, hey, how are you? How's your day? I'm just in my same home. I go out to cook, I come back to the place, I continue, you know, and yes, it's a routine. I have a set time to eat, I have a set time to cut off work, but unfortunately that routine does get very blurred because now I don't have an office to go to, now I don't have this, you know, and how do you stay motivated? You know, how do you advise people in times like that? Because I know some of your work is remote too, and how do you really space yourself and tell yourself, this is work, it's okay to have a break or have time for yourself? Because I think for me, like, I get into work mode and I'm like, I can't even read. I got to start working.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think for me, one of the biggest issues with this now is I've noticed, like, I go to sleep and I'm thinking, what's the next thing to do? Because now my workspace is right next door. You know, there is no distance. There's no break. So, you know, I know it's a little bit long, but I'd like to see
it's a wonderful question. And I think the thing I like about the question is everyone's dealing with it now, right? And so I've realized that in my place, I need to make some physical changes. I have 3 wonderful screens, 27-inch screens. I have a beautiful desk and all of that. But I've realized that less of my space I want dedicated to just watching TV and being social. And I do need more space for where I work because that's where most of my time goes. Of course. But we had a situation where I was working with our clients. They were in Switzerland. We were working remotely. And we'd have these 90-minute sessions, and it was just no way to get the depth of the strategic insights that we needed. So we actually had to ask the clients, we're like, look, you got to bring us to Switzerland. and they did. And Kristoffer and I went, and Mustafa and Shagan, we all went over to Switzerland. And we had to break that routine and just sit down with the clients, have lunch with them, have dinner with them, and just work through it. Some of the things that I remember once we were going off to dinner, and they were sending an invoice to a client, I think in Singapore actually, and something that I saw, because the computer was still connected to the big screen, and I saw something, and I was thinking, well, why would you do it that way? And we spent, I think, and Kristoffer will have to remind me, I think we took about 20 minutes or half an hour, and I just went through their whole sales pitch process.
Interesting.
When we got back to Toronto, the clients were saying that the conversion rate and the benefit that they got from that half an hour that I spent and Kristoffer and I spent going through their materials has closed sales so much faster and all. But that moment would have never happened if I just didn't happen to see something. And so then I remembered again the importance of being together. But it's all like what we were talking about before. What works best for you? We love to think of ourselves as humans as being these logical people who think things through. We are not. We are social, emotional creatures.
Exactly.
The worst punishment in the worst prison is solitary confinement. We are not made to be alone. In fact, when someone can't work well with others and they're detached from society, we call them sociopathic. That's a problem when someone can't make friends and they harm small animals. That's a problem. We need to be connected. So if you pride yourself on your independence and your autonomy and your ability to do things by yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. But nothing worth having in life can be accomplished alone.
Of course.
When you're driving down the DVP and you're entering Toronto and you're going along the Gardeners there and you get that beautiful view of Toronto, the skyline. You see all the cranes for the buildings that they're building. Could any of those buildings or anything that you see, the road, the elevated highway that you're driving on, could any of that exist if one person worked by themselves?
Definitely.
It's impossible. The only reason we're the top of the food chain is because we work well together. One-on-one with a rhinoceros or a lion but as a group, we're able to do incredible things.
Exactly.
So yes, you need your own time. Yes, you need your space. Yes, you do want to shine and be, but if you don't regularly connect with people on your terms in a way, then you will become less of a human being. And nobody wants that. Definitely. So maybe you need a co-working space, or maybe you need to go into the office, or just go to a coffee shop or something. But never forget that the most important thing is to be the best human being you can be, not to be the most profitable or productive robot, right? Like, you're still trying to build a life worth living.
Definitely. And I think, I know we're wrapping up on time, and I think this is crazy to think how fast time goes, because I think we're just getting deep into conversation.
Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
But I think, honestly, this has been great. You've really taken us on such a wonderful journey, starting off with, what influences you when you were younger, and how those little changes, how you overcame all these things, and how that pushed you into who you are today. Sure. And, we even transitioned that to a full pivot into routine, and how important routines are for daily lives, but also just understanding who you are, what is going to push you to your greatness, and how you're going to make that routine, settle for yourself. So I think before we wrap up, and just on the topic of routines, I think, do you have any advice, for those who struggle, even, this is not really entrepreneurship, but when you think of the fact that entrepreneurs, the hardest thing is getting off your bed. Yes. You have no boss, you have no schedule, you have nothing. You define what you want to do for yourself. And I think that really ties with our routine question, what do you recommend for people who do struggle, even setting up a routine, even getting off the bed, or doing things for themselves without having someone saying, hey, you got to get here, I think that would be a nice closing question, but I think it's something so impactful for people who are struggling to take that first step.
So first of all, don't be so hard on yourself, and be much harder on yourself. Okay, so if you're struggling to have the routine that you want, that's a wonderful thing, because that means that you're not happy with where you're at and you want to grow. So people that are lazy and do nothing and accomplish nothing, most of the times they're not unhappy with where they are. That you need to motivate yourself to change, you need to have a desire to be better. So that's wonderful. But when it comes to getting the routine you want, proximity and habits and other people are important. For instance, I knew that I needed to get in shape. I knew that. And I started talking to people that had a great physique. I'd see this person walking, they had like 9% body fat. Excuse me, sir. How long have you been working out? Because I thought that was the question to ask. But it was funny, because I seemed to get a certain answer where they would say 7 years, but only 5 years seriously. Of course. And everyone I asked who had a wonderful physique seemed to have this divide between when it was a lifestyle and when they would just go to the gym. And so what I did was I told myself, well, if I can get past 2 years, then I'll probably get into that state where, but my expectation was I had to stick with it. Of course. But I couldn't stick with it. And I didn't know what to do. I remember when I started working out, because my right hand is so much stronger than my left, I would curl a 15-pound weight with the left and a 10-pound weight with the did I do that wrong? This is my right hand anyway. But I didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up hiring a trainer. And then the first thing you learn when you hire a trainer is that pain is not bad. Because you're thinking, as soon as I feel pain, I'm going to quit. And they're like, okay, 4 more reps. And you're like, bro, I cannot. Like, literally cannot. But then you get to the point where you're like, I can. And psychologically, you start changing where you're like, I am going to finish these 12 reps regardless. And you get to a place where it's not about the weight anymore. It's just about the mental battle of overcoming. That lesson works on you. But I needed to have a trainer for 3 years just to get into the routine. So now I had to invest $1,000 a month to have a trainer to get me into that routine. Of course. During COVID, when the gyms were closed, now I'm off not working out, I'm not in my routine. And so I realized that we have a wonderful gym in our condo. And it's like, I need to not just go to the Good Life where, it's a little bit further, or the, the Lifetime Fitness. I need to go to the closest place I can work out, because if I have to travel, I'll make an excuse. So think of that. Think of that in its micro application. If I have trouble getting out of bed, then I am going to set an alarm. Well, AMG, I hit snooze 1,000,000 times. Well, then turn up your phone and put it in the other room. So the only way to turn it off is to get out of bed. Like, it's those small changes. But I think it all starts with ordering your life. Don't worry about being disciplined and being precise. Of course. Set up your world for that. Only there's literally no processed foods. Well, let me think. I have artificial sweetener, that's processed. I have that, you know, that stuff you squirt into water to make it whatever. I'll put that in yogurt and turn it. So I'll put it into like 0% Greek yogurt and turn it into like ice cream tasting, but it's like tons of protein and very few calories. But for processed food, yeah, and it's crazy because you have to shop very often when you eat fresh food. But it's not that I'm so good for not having processed food. I cannot have it there because I will eat it. If I have pasta there, I will cook it.
Exactly.
Right? I will cook any, you know, so I really have to make sure that I discipline myself and I order my world. But I think on top of that, involving other people is fine. If you have an accountability coach, but you really have to make sure that they're like regimented, military. So I got even the personal trainer I chose is German paratrooper, right? So I knew I needed that. It's not social time. So at the end of the day, it's like, look, you're in charge of your own life. You're responsible for how far you go. That's scary when you're first leaving school. Exactly. It's scary when you're out there on your own. But the opportunity of being able to define yourself in real time through the challenges and the opportunities that come your way is such a wonderful blessing and such a glorious opportunity that don't get so hard. Don't get down on yourself when things don't go right. As quickly as possible, realign yourself with your ideal self. Do super hard things where you're likely to fail, but when you get back up, you're going to get all the things you need to be great.
And I mean, you know, thank you so much for that, because I think, you know, this is a perfect conversation to wrap up, because for me, this was a really personal one, because I think I completely agree. I just finished school a few weeks ago.
Yes. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I mean, it's been such a rush finishing school. And I've had this mindset that finishing school is going to be, wow, boom, you're going to get into a crazy lifestyle. This is the professional world. Right. And I was like, I've been waiting 4 or 5 years for this moment. And this week especially, I transitioned into work. And I'm sitting here at home and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is not exactly how I imagined it.
Exactly.
Why am I so down? You know, I told myself this, but I'm feeling this. Why is that the case? And I think it's really resonating with me, because now I'm realizing, like, why am I being so harsh on myself? You know, it's setting up the lifestyle that you make it to be. And,
Absolutely.
you know, while right now maybe the work from home isn't feeling great, I can take myself up. You know, we got co-working space, we have cafes, just getting your mind to work how it works best. I think that's what really resonates to me.
It is.
And, you know, even what you mentioned about just, I think I saw something, I was reading a strategy where you reduce the amount of steps or things you do to get to a task, you know? So like you said with the alarm clock, whether it be setting some sort of shortcut to make it one press instead of 10 different options.
Absolutely.
That's, I think, something that are little changes that you do, but makes whatever your circumstance work for you. And I really, really love that. And I think, you know, everyone here is going to take out that fact that the perfect routine, while at the current moment may not seem realistic, our life is our life. You know, how we shape it, how we transform what we want to do with it, that's up to us. No matter how hard your work is, this and that, you are in control of your work, your life, and how you want to do it. And we as humans often forget that. We do. We actually do have control of things. Okay, maybe the work you thought was amazing doesn't work out. Make it change, you know? Talk to your boss, talk to whoever, find a way to change it. And if that doesn't work, it's okay, you know? Find another way to do that. And I think that, you know, just closing off, I think is so amazing that you really opened up for us, you know, just realizing that we are us. I'm human, but I'm also myself, and I'm able to control and take what I want for myself and go for it. So, I mean, you know, thank you so much. This was actually a wonderful, wonderful episode. And I think just closing off, I think we could go on for hours and hours.
We could. So happy, yes.
I think it really means a lot to me to have this conversation. And I think what you mentioned today, from the whole journey until finding out your routine, finding yourself, pushing yourself towards greatness, this is going to resonate with so many people. And, you know, once again, thank you so much for coming here.
Absolutely.
It is an honor to be able to have this conversation with you, you know, and I'm hoping we can have many more in the future.
Yes. And let me say congratulations on the new podcast, Trailblazers Podcast. Thank you so much for having me as your first guest. And Godspeed to you.
Thank you all, and have a wonderful day. And stay tuned for the next episode. Hopefully we'll bring you back, and maybe the next one will be us at the gym at 5 a.m. Thank you guys. Thank you all.
Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.